Thank you all for joining me tonight. My name is Rebekah Harter. I'm a registered dietitian and nutritionist located in Rochester, New York. I primarily work in community nutrition right now, doing nutrition education sessions like this, a lot in the library, some other locations too. I also do outpatient nutrition therapy via telehealth in the evenings. I love nutrition education. I love getting people connected with resources and tools to improve their overall diet and their health through the foods that they're eating. And so I'm happy that you guys have joined me tonight to talk about something that's probably been on a lot of our minds lately, and that is tips to feed our family frugally. So how to eat well on a budget. Certainly, we've been thinking about this a lot recently, given the changes that we've been seeing in the SNAP program, the increased cost of food. Things are getting harder to buy, and definitely it can feel like a strain on our wallets every time we go to the grocery store. So I want to just talk briefly about the impact of food insecurity just in our nation. And then we'll ask a few questions to see who's here and get into the agenda for tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. Of course, we've been hearing this probably a lot in the news recently, but food insecurity is a big issue in the United States. Based on our most recent data from 2023, about 1 in 7.4 households were considered food insecure in the United States. And that works out to about 13.5% of households in the United States being food insecure. As far as that definition of food insecurity, the USDA has defined this as being limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or limited or uncertain ability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways. And this is from the Guide to Measuring Household Food Security from 2000. And I think we certainly have seen a lot of our neighbors might be struggling with access to food. Maybe we have also been struggling with getting food ourselves. And so I really want to kind of do a quick check-in. I'm trying to use some tools from YouTube Live. So we're going to go ahead and ask a quick polling question. We're going to do 2 questions to just gauge the level of food security that we have even in the room right now. And then 1 question regarding how it's impacting the food choices that we're making. So first question, I'll go ahead and start this poll. This is from the Hunger Vital Signs. You may have seen this before. Okay, maybe if you're at the doctor's or pediatrician, they might ask this. This is a great tool that we use to gauge whether someone is food insecure or not. So within the past 12 months, I or we were worried whether our food would run out before we got money to buy more. Is your answer often, sometimes, or never? Okay, and we'll end that. It looks like none of us that are in the room right now. That's good. We'll do 1 more, actually 2 more polls. So the answers will still be often, sometimes, and never. Next question. In the past 12 months, the food I or we bought just didn't last, and I or we didn't have the money to get more. Was this often, sometimes, or never? Okay. And we'll end this one. It seems like none of us, that's good as well. And next question, same answers, often, sometimes, and never. Within the past 12 months, I or we have modified our normal grocery purchases because of the cost of food. Okay. All right. And we'll just end that poll. And it looks like often and sometimes were answers. Nobody said never. Definitely the cost of food has certainly been on our mind a lot lately. Food prices have gone up, right? So this evening, what we're going to do is take the next 45 minutes to an hour to talk a little bit more about how this has impacted us and how to address some of the concerns when it comes to budget and feeding our families. So next slide. For tonight's agenda, what we're going to do first is do a quick discussion of what is healthy eating and how much does it cost based on some of the USDA gathered data. Then we're going to discuss what drains that we have on our own food budgets and how to address these. We're going to do a quick review of maybe some frugal recipes to get us a little bit brainstorming to see how we can maybe incorporate these sorts of things in our own diet. And then we're going to wrap up with how to get a little bit more assistance. I know most of us have said that we're not really struggling with food insecurity right now, but given its prevalence in the United States, it's likely that we do know someone who is struggling with food insecurity. So being aware of what resources are available can help us connect people in our community to support one another. So let's get right into it with what is healthy eating and how much does it cost? Okay, great question. As a dietitian, typically I educate what healthy eating is using the My Plate diagram. This is from the United States Department of Agriculture as well. And when I'm doing this education, I like to say, okay, let's try to make half of our plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter of our plate grains. And when we're choosing grains, let's try to choose whole grains more often. The recommendation is to make half of our grains whole grains. And then a quarter of our plate should be some sort of protein. It doesn't have to be animal protein. We could choose we should choose animal-based protein, but we could also choose plant-based protein. So things like beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, all of those, great. The USDA recommends having a dairy serving 3 times per day and choosing a low-fat dairy choice when possible. This is just to make sure that we're getting sufficient amounts of calcium and vitamin D. Calcium, we certainly can get from our dietary sources. Vitamin D is a little bit more tricky. So for dairy, we do fortify it with vitamin D. Vitamin D is important for our immune system and our bone health. When we live up here, I'm from Rochester, and I recognize that some of us attending tonight are from Rochester. It's really difficult, particularly in the winter, to get sufficient amounts of sunlight to synthesize vitamin D in our bodies. So if we're not getting that 3 servings of dairy, certainly we can get protein from other sources, we can get calcium from other sources, but it might be good to have a supplementation of vitamin D in our diet if we're not consuming dairy. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has clarified this a little bit more as far as specific guidelines for those food groups based on our needs in the dietary guidelines. Next, we're going to look at the dietary guidelines of 2020 to 2025. Newest dietary guidelines have not been dropped yet, but we probably expect them shortly. These recommendations are going to be those servings based on our age, our gender, our stage in life. You know, if we're pregnant or we're lactating, our recommendations might change. If we're elderly, our recommendations might change. Here's some references for that dietary pattern for an adult age 19 through 59 based on caloric needs. Most of our caloric needs will fall individually, will fall between like 1,600 and 3,000 calories per day. Your specific needs might vary based on your gender, age, body composition, activity level. And so what this looks like as far as portion sizes is it's about 2 to 4 servings of vegetables per day, 1.5 to 2.5 servings of fruit daily, 5 to 10 servings of grain. And again, we're trying to make half of those grains whole grains, 5 to 7 ounces of protein daily. And this protein category is further divided into about 2 to 3 servings of fish weekly to get good amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, 4 to 6 ounces of nuts and seeds weekly, and then again, that 3 servings of dairy daily. What this looks like for a 2,000 calorie diet is kind of can be divided in this way: about 2 cups of fruit, 2.5 cups of veggies, 6 ounces of grains, 5.5 ounces of protein, and 3 cups of dairy. And then the dietary guidelines also give guidelines for other discretionary intake of things like added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium. We want to try to limit these because we do find that higher amounts of these are correlated with certain disease risk factors. And so we want to decrease that whenever possible. Now, this dietary guidelines is used to create the USDA's Thrifty Food Plan. And you may have heard this in the news recently, particularly when we're talking about SNAP. The USDA uses the dietary guidelines to develop basically like a standard market basket. So this is like a shopping list, right, of foods that you would need to eat to meet those nutrient needs based on age and gender. Okay. And then they use this information to cost out how much this diet or meal plan might cost for a family based on their household size. This information is then used to determine the budget for SNAP benefits, and it is variable. We see that the market basket costs do change and are updated regularly based on inflation. The USDA also creates several other food plans, not just the Thrifty Food Plan, but they have other costed out food plans. So low cost food plan, moderate, and liberalized food plan. And these are used in other ways in the government to determine budgets for things like alimony, child support, foster care food allotment. The liberalized food plan is typically used to determine food allowance for military as well. All that being said, the Thrifty Food Plan is going to be the lowest cost that the government thinks that you need in your household to meet all those nutrition needs that they have recommended for us, right? So it's recommended based on current research. So what does this look like for a household? Well, the dietary guidelines for the Thrifty Food Plan released in 2021. So this is the information from that report. And what I want you to see here is that the market baskets are divided into categories and then further divided. And you can see the amount of weight. It's divided by weight for each of these foods, and then the cost share of each of these food categories. So here you'll see vegetables are divided. It's not just vegetables. It's about 35 pounds for a reference family of 4 for vegetables, including dark green vegetables, red and orange veggies, beans, peas, and lentils, starchy vegetables like potato, corn, and peas, and other vegetables. Fruit is divided into whole fruit and fruit juices to meet those needs. Fruit juices tend to be less expensive than whole fruit. Grains are divided into whole grains and refined grains. Again, that's about 14 pounds. Dairy is about 41 pounds, with the majority of that dairy coming from liquid milk and then some coming from cheese. The protein foods are divided into categories as well. We see meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, nuts, seeds, and soy products. And then there's a miscellaneous category that covers things like the beverages that we're drinking, like coffee and tea. It covers things like table fats, so whatever you're cooking with, as well as different seasonings, sauces, condiments, spices, as well as pre-prepared foods. And so what I want to show you here is the cost share of this market basket. And I want to think, what does your food budget look like? And does it kind of compare to what the Thrifty Food Plan is? So that cost share we see, a large chunk of that food budget is going towards protein foods, almost a quarter, right? And then on top of that, vegetables and fruit is making up 37% of that market basket cost share too. So that's a huge chunk. Over half of our budget is going in this Thrifty Food Plan. That's kind of balanced eating, protein and produce. Additionally, about 16% is going to grains, about 14% is going to dairy, and that miscellaneous category, which again covers like spices and beverages, maybe pre-prepared food, about 7%. We can look further into the specific costed out based on this reference family. And this is going to be the information for mainland United States. There's separate information for those who live in Alaska and Hawaii, because obviously these are higher costs of living locations. But for this reference family, this is a family of 4 where there's a male and a female aged 20 to 50. And then there are 2 children, one age 6 to 8 and one age 9 to 11. This family would need to spend about $231 per week on groceries to meet those nutrition needs, based on kind of low cost groceries too. You can use this chart here to determine how much your food amount should be based on the Thrifty meal plan. It is adjusted based on family size. We know that smaller family sizes might be a little bit more expensive because it's cheaper to feed more people, right? And so if your household size is maybe over that 4-person household size, the adjustment can go down. And you'll see that cost adjustment over here on the right. We're going to look at the other meal plans too, just quickly to show that they're a little bit different. And again, kind of a reference for this family. But there's a low cost plan and moderate. Again, these are useful for the government to determine things like alimony and child support. And then the liberal plan, typically used for military food allowances. Okay, so a lot of information about how much does food cost, right? So let's go into how we address drains on our budget. And I have another polling question. I just want to bring it up. So I'm asking what the biggest drain is on your budget. So is it no plan, expensive items? Is it food waste? Or is it eating out? And if it is something else, just drop that in the chat. I'd love to know, what is the biggest drain on your food budget? We'll take a few seconds to answer this question. Okay, we're just answering this question. What is the biggest drain on your food budget? I think probably many of us have gotten an opportunity to answer this. Go ahead and answer if you haven't. And we'll end that poll and take a look at those responses. Yes. Oh my gosh. If you have dietary preferences or like specific diet that you're following, food can get really expensive. Also, if there's allergies, also if there's pickiness in your household, tons of things. I'm seeing expensive items, food waste. Okay. Oh, no plan or eating out as a priority. Okay. Good. It's good to see. I think when we're aware of what the biggest drain is on our budget, we can really hone into that and focus and support, like, what are some strategies that are going to help with that? Yes, and you can further, if you have other drains that are on your budget, feel free to drop them in the chat. I think very interesting to see. But yes, having no plan, the cost of items always ever rising, food waste, if we're wasting a lot of food, maybe if we're eating out, all of these can be huge drains on our budget, right? So what we want to do is kind of go through these, and we're going to see how do we address each of those. So let's start with no plan. If we have no plan, what is the strategy to address that? Well, make a plan, right? When we're deciding, what our weekly meal plan is going to look like, it's always good to shop your pantry first. So look what is in your pantry and then prioritize those foods that are maybe going to be expiring soon or past their prime so that you are less likely to waste those. And then also use those in recipes that you choose for that week. We might make a list of foods that your family already enjoys and adds this add this to your plan. It is good to try new things, but I know Holly mentioned some pickiness. If you are seeing some pickiness in your household, it can be challenging to try new foods, especially if you're not sure whether it's just going to get wasted or not. So making sure you prioritize foods that you're already eating and enjoying, try to make those balanced when possible. Again, using that idea of like, what's a balanced plate look like? And then, certainly incorporate the small amounts of let's try new things and see if our family likes it, and then, see how that goes. You might want to decide what you are eating and then make that grocery list so you can use it in the grocery store, and consider having a par stock of pantry staples that you add to your list when needed. This might be things that are just kind of stable, shelf stable in your pantry. Like we always have curry bricks. We always have pasta. We always have pasta sauce. We always have frozen veggies. Think about what is included and make sure that you're purchasing those. And you can kind of be mindful, okay, these are on sale, so I'm going to get more now because they're shelf-stable, and kind of consider that. Here's an example of what I might use to work on a weekly meal plan. Really, we just want to sketch it out. If you know you're going to have the same breakfast every day, you might just say, okay, these are the types of food I'm going to grab. But if you have variable dinners, you might want to be more specific. Okay, these are the ingredients that I want to make sure that I have on hand. You can certainly do a lot of different strategies to make that dinner decision dilemma a little bit more manageable. So things like having theme nights, or having, pretty consistently, we always have these sorts of foods in our household because they're our favorites, or what the kids like, or what we enjoy. And then go from there, develop kind of a grocery list so that you can go shopping with it. Now, when deciding where to go, of course, there's this question of like, okay, what grocery store do I want to go to? Because there's a lot of different options. And when we're considering where to go, we might consider things like discount stores for lower cost items, bulk stores, so like Sam's Club, Costco, BJ's. You might be able to get a larger amount of those shelf-stable items for a lower cost. Farmers markets can also be a great place to have lower cost items or locally sourced items. Non-food stores, so I'm thinking places like Ross or Marshall's. You might not think of these as food stores, but they sometimes can have specialty foods at discount prices. These are things to consider. If I'm looking for chia seeds or I'm looking for hemp hearts, like this might be the place to go versus going to like a standard grocery store. Then there's, of course, food assistance markets. And in Rochester, I'm talking about things like the curbside market, where it will come to your location so you don't have to travel. It's kind of a market that maybe comes to areas that are considered maybe food deserts for a little bit more accessibility for a variety of different foods. And then large grocery stores. Again, because I'm talking to people in our area from Rochester, I did want to just bring up the farmers markets that are available now. It's getting close to winter, kind of late fall. A lot of our farmers markets are closed, but several of them are open during the winter. There's two in particular, the Brighton Farmers Market. The location does change in winter. This is the winter location. It's on Sunday from 10 to 1. And the Rochester Public Market, this is open consistently all year round. Same location, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, morning to early afternoon. When we're deciding on those other grocery stores to shop at, right, I think it's important to be familiar with the foods that we typically buy, right? Because we all have an idea of what's normally on our grocery list. We need to know what their average price is so that we know if a store puts it on sale, like, is that a really good sale? Or is that just normally the price and the price has changed recently? You can certainly do cost comparison when you're going in the grocery store, but a lot of grocery stores will have the ability for us to do cost comparison online. This can be really good to do online shopping too. If you have concerns about impulse purchases, you can certainly buy everything ahead of time and have them load it right into your car. But being aware of the differences between costs in grocery stores can be really beneficial, because you might be surprised. The store you might think that is more expensive might have that food item that is pantry staple for you at a less expensive cost more often. So being aware of that. Now, I do want to just kind of go through a standard market basket of different foods in the Rochester area, because again, I recognize that some of our neighbors might be here, and I want us just to be aware of that average cost. And this is going to be different based on the location that you're in. Obviously, different, like higher cost of living locations might have higher food costs. So just being aware of what that standard cost is will really help guide you when you're in the grocery store. So here we're going over some grain options: bread, rice, oatmeal, quinoa, tortillas, cereal, pasta. And you'll see there's some variability on the grocery stores that we're going to, right? One grocery store might be better with some items. One grocery store might be better with others. And that average price is really what we're going to be basing on, to see, is this a good deal? I don't know. Let's check it out. So this is with grains. Up next, we have fruit. I chose some lower cost fruit options here: bananas, oranges, and apples. And then I also chose strawberries to consider. This is just something to think about. It's obviously winter time when I'm speaking. It's November right now, and strawberries aren't really in season. So the price does vary depending on what is in season. And you'll notice the price can be a little bit higher compared to some of those other prices per pound. Up next, we have veggies. Here I have 2 bags of frozen vegetables. One is mixed, one is broccoli. These are 12-ounce bags. About $1 to $1.40 is the average cost here. Carrots in 1-pound containers, potatoes in 5-pound containers, onions 1 pound, and then a head of iceberg lettuce. See those average costs. Next up, we have protein. I know that the video in the bottom is kind of covering up some of these, the average cost down here for the canned tuna and not for the canned tuna, just for the salmon. The average cost is about $7.78 because the Walmart cost right now is about $5.24 per pound of the frozen salmon. These are often in a larger bag container, maybe 3 pounds. So that's protein. And then one last, we'll do dairy. This is an example of those reference foods. Milk. We have, milk, we have 1 gallon. Cheese is a 1/2 pound and 32 ounce for the yogurt. This is plain, unflavored yogurt. And you'll see average here is about $3 for a milk, about $2 for that 1/2 pound of cheese, about $2.60 for that yogurt. Okay, so when we do go to the grocery store, now we know how much the average cost is, so we can kind of decide, is it a good deal? Am I going to pick it up or not? We want to make sure that we are bringing our grocery list and sticking to it. How many times have you gone to the grocery store and you have completely forgotten what you're there for? And you're just wandering around and thinking, oh, what was I here for? What am I doing here? And when that happens, we're more likely to grab things impulsively. Additionally, if we're going to the grocery store hungry, it's very likely that we're going to grab something that we didn't intend to purchase because we're pretty hungry. So we want to make sure that we have something to eat before we go to the grocery store, so we're not shopping on an empty stomach. And then I always like to encourage, let's have some flexibility when it comes to our plan. If we just want to make sure that we're picking up, let's say, fruits and vegetables, right? We don't necessarily on our grocery list have to say, I'm picking up raspberries. Especially in the middle of the winter, raspberries might be $5-6 a container. Is that more reasonable for me to pick up? Or maybe would apples fit that need that I have in my diet to have some fruit, or maybe bananas, or maybe something that's more in season, right? Same thing with other produce options. Just kind of consider some flexibility here based on cost. Maybe something's on sale and you make that choice instead of something else. Next up, and I think this was something that a lot of us said was a big drain on our budgets: expensive items, okay? Food costs have certainly risen, and so it's important to be choosy with the prices, right? We want to aim to purchase less expensive items, so we might consider, again, what is on sale, what is in season. We might choose generic and store brands over brand names because these often are less expensive, but they might taste just as good. We may incorporate lower cost proteins and produce because remember, that takes a huge toll on our budget. Like, this is a huge chunk of that budget. Well over 50% of the budget is coming from proteins and produce. And then we might consider comparison using unit pricing. Oftentimes when you're in the grocery store, you'll look at the price label, and underneath the price per package, typically they'll have a unit price. So you can do some comparison between the different varieties of whatever this is. So it might say, it's this much per ounce or it's this much per pound. This can kind of guide you to say, okay, this is less per pound. Maybe this is a better option because I want a larger volume, right? And so using that to guide us as far as determining what is lower cost. Again, referring back to that thrifty food plan, that market basket cost share, proteins, vegetables, fruit, when combined with fruits and veggies, like big chunk of our food budget. So being mindful that these things do tend to be a little bit more expensive, and we need a lot of them, at least with the fruits and veggies, if we want to make half of our plates fruits and vegetables. So let's really be mindful when we're making choices about these foods in particular at the grocery store. So we want to buy what's on sale. How do we know what's on sale? Well, they might be advertised in the store. We might check out circulars or other advertisements. Certainly there's paper circulars, but you might have applied to a grocery store's like member card. And so you might get advertisements to your email. Like, these things are helpful to check out to see, okay, what's on sale right now? And should I go to this grocery store or this one? Use the store coupons. Like, sometimes we'll see them on the circulars themselves. There will be like a cutout coupon. Or you could clip coupons in the app. A lot of grocery stores will have apps that you can use as well. And manufacturer coupons to purchase some of those foods that are maybe name brand and kind of more expensive. I think never underestimate the value of reaching out to the brands that you enjoy and just asking for a coupon. You never know if they're going to send you something, and oftentimes, they might. And so I think it's good to even consider what sorts of foods you like to eat and see, can I get coupons for this? Can I reach out to these companies? Can I kind of watch for sales for those things that I enjoy eating? And then perhaps we're considering less expensive family packs or those bulk packs, especially if we have room for storage, right? Sometimes you might say, okay, I can get a large amount of ground beef and store it for later. This is more cost effective than having a smaller amount for me. Next, we want to buy what's in season. And again, I know I'm talking to some of our neighbors from New York, but if you're in another location, typically the Department of Agriculture for your state will have information about what is in season. This time of year in New York, it's often going to be those brassicas and root vegetables, as far as the vegetables that are in season, and things that I'll store for a long time, like apples, as far as fruits, sometimes pears. These things can be good because they last for a long time, and they're often, because they don't have to travel as far, going to be less expensive when we do grab them in the grocery store. Next up, remember, those foods like the produce and the protein foods, they can get really expensive. So perhaps consider bulking them up. We know that things like beef, ground beef, can get really expensive. If you bulk this up with things like textured vegetable protein, beans, mushrooms, this can really help stretch and offer some other plant-based sources of protein in there as well. For things like vegetables, we might consider tossing in some of those vegetables that are fresh but like have long shelf lives, like potatoes, carrots, onions, or maybe even frozen vegetables, because you can get a large amount of these at a lower cost. And these are great to bulk up things like soups, stews, and curries. Next issue that we found was kind of a drain on our budget is food waste, right? So there's a lot of different strategies to address food waste. Number one is make sure that we're storing foods right away and storing them in the right way, right? Some foods require refrigeration, and so we want to make sure we are putting those in the refrigerator right away. We're not leaving them out for long periods of time. If we're taking, let's say, our gallon of milk out to pour a cup of milk for our kiddo, we want to make sure that after we pour that milk, we're putting it right back in the fridge. This will just extend its shelf life a little bit longer. We may choose shelf-stable options more often, especially when we don't have a plan. If you have a plan for something and you know, hey, I know I'm going to make this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to prep it right away, it's going to be ready, then that's absolutely fine. But if we don't have a plan and we just know, okay, I need some fruits, I need some vegetables, I need some protein, we might choose shelf-stable options because we know that they'll last until we can come up with an idea of how we're going to use them. We want to make sure that we prioritize using older ingredients first, and then we want to make sure that we make the right amount of food for the servings, who we're going to serve. This is particularly the case if our household size has changed recently. I know this sometimes happens if, let's say, your kids go to college, or if there has been, maybe for us, like if you have someone who wasn't going to school, is now going to school and is getting fed at school, to kind of consider, like, how much do we need to make for this? Can we make a little less so that we don't have tons of leftovers? Or maybe we're planning for leftovers, so we end up making extra batches so we can freeze it or store it for later to use it for those leftovers. When it comes to shelf-stable options, these can be definitely great options to meet your daily nutrient needs on a budget. Frozen, canned, boxed, dried, fermented, pickled, all of these are good. Some of them tend to be a little higher in sodium and added sugar, but there's certainly some modifications that we can do to make sure that we decrease this, or at least account for that. So when it comes to canned things that are canned in water with salt, maybe we're choosing the salt-free option or low sodium option. When it comes to, like, maybe fruit that's canned in syrup, we can also choose, maybe canned in water instead. You certainly can put these in like a colander and rinse them off too. That's a good way to decrease that added sugar, added salt in our diet. And these can be awesome, just to make sure that, like, it's around the house. So you are encouraged to eat those foods, fruits and veggies. I did want to just bring up, as we're talking about boxed and canned containers, sometimes we get confused a little bit about dates, right? And I just want to kind of clear the air here. As far as date marking, apart from infant formula and some baby foods, the FDA does not regulate the dates on foods, which means who regulates it? Well, manufacturers regulate it. So they get to decide what label that they put on it. And often we'll see, best by, sell by, used before, best before, etc. These are some instructions to the grocery stores on how long they can display the item. But really, it is showing us the peak quality and freshness. And it is not talking about food safety. So how do we know whether food is safe or not? Well, I think a lot of it comes to package integrity. Okay, if we have a can item and it is rusted, or it is bloated, or there are dents on the seam, then this has the potential to introduce harmful bacteria and could be potentially not safe for us. But if it's fine and it's been sitting there for a while and it's like, past its expiration date by several months, maybe even more than several months, we can open that up and do like a quick test, right? We can smell the item. We can look at it. If it looks normal, if it smells normal, and there's no package integrity issue when it comes to shelf-stable items, we can rest assured that this is probably a safe item for us to consume. When it comes to frozen items, again, it's going to be about like how we're storing it. So we do want to make sure that like our freezer hasn't turned off, and when we have purchased it, there's no large ice crystals, because this could be an indication of improper temperature control when it comes to those. So just being aware of that, but oftentimes it's just going to be a change in the quality. That's a good question. Is there things to consider now that testing and inspections has had changes with their budget? I think yes, but I don't know I don't know what the results of this are going to be just yet. It's kind of new territory for us to be in. But that being said, companies don't want bad bad press, right? And so they don't want recalls because this is bad on, this is not good for them. And so I think companies are still going to try to maintain the integrity of food safety. And so we can, again, be mindful of that packaging too, to make sure that this is safe. And, certainly be aware of when recalls are announced. Many grocery stores will let you know. And if you purchase foods online or using a membership card at checkout, sometimes you put in your phone number, the grocery store might tell you, okay, hey, we noticed you purchased this item, it was recalled. Sometimes they do this. And so this is good to just be aware. But I think it's a little soon to say what the effects of budgetary changes are going to be on food testing. But good question. Next up, as far as food waste, I like to recommend this book when I'm teaching about food waste because it's really fun. It's from IKEA. It was released in April several years ago, I think, for Earth Day. And this is just a very interesting cookbook. It shows different ways to use food scraps, or maybe the portion of food that we might consider inedible, to kind of incorporate it into our diet, different strategies as far as, maybe growing kitchen scraps. And I think these are kind of fun, interesting things to do to reduce our overall budget by reducing the food waste that we have in our household. Last, we have the drain on our budget of eating out. Okay. I think that with a varied, balanced diet, eating out can certainly be incorporated in it. When we're on a budget, though, it can be kind of tricky, right? Because we might not have a lot of extra income to spend on going out. Certainly the costs of foods have risen when it comes to restaurant prices. So recommendations I have here are, let's just make sure that restaurants are not an impulse choice. And instead, there's something that we're very intentional about, right? It's good to have fun. It's good to go out with our friends. It's good to, enjoy foods at restaurants. But we want to make sure that we're not doing it impulsively. And instead, we're doing it with some thought. So this might mean that on the days that we're more likely to, choose to order a pizza or choose to grab something on the way home with the kids, we may plan ahead for those days so that we have meals ready that are less time, less energy, less spoons, so that we can avoid eating out, because this is a drain on our budget. We want to choose restaurants with deals and discounts. Think of things like happy hours. Maybe if you're, again, in like their restaurant club, they might send you a coupon for your birthday, or a coupon occasionally. If this is a restaurant you want to go to and you have a coupon, even better. It's going to be a little less expensive. We want to avoid purchasing extras. This might look like, do you really need an appetizer, a dessert, and a drink with your meal, or would an entree be just fine? And same thing here with if you're going to a restaurant because you really love their chocolate cake, it's okay to just go for their chocolate cake. Have dinner first and then just go for dessert. That is absolutely fine. You're an adult. You just get to make these decisions. Yes. Oh, yes. That's a good point. Some restaurants also have discounts for kids. So kind of consider, is my kid even going to eat this? And if they're coming with us, do I want to spend extra for their meal? Maybe they have discounts to have them come, and then you can have foods for them. I know in our area, sometimes places like fast food restaurants will do like a weeknight free kids meal, drive through, pick it up. So this can be advantageous if it's something you were already planning on doing, right? You really would just want to be intentional with it. And then be mindful of portions. I don't know how many of you guys have probably been to restaurants and you see that portion size. It's not the same that you would serve yourself at home, maybe much more. And so that could look like, I'm going to split this with someone else, or maybe I am going to pack up half of it and take it home. I did want to just quickly go over some low cost and fast meals. Consider things like cooking once and eat twice. So, like batch cooking and freezing leftovers. Also, maybe consider having a par stock of quick meals on hand, like omelets, curry, quesadillas, smoothies, sandwiches. All of these can be really fast. Even like, cereal and milk, right? It can be balanced. Just add a fruit to this meal, and certainly listen to your hunger cues. But it's not every night, and one food choice that you're making doesn't make or break health, but it can certainly affect your budget. So being mindful, hey, like this is a choice that I'm making in service of my budget, and I'm kind of accommodating, and can I make this more balanced as far as health? I want to again quickly talk about some ways that we're leveraging technology. Of course, all of us have like these mini computers in our pockets. So there are some apps that can be beneficial to reducing some of the cost of food. And I just want to like real fast go over a few of those. First is the Flip app. I don't know if you've seen this. The Flip app is basically digital circulars, not just grocery stores, kind of all circulars, every store, but you can kind of see it if you don't get circulars in your mail. You can see the digital circulars in the Flip app. Really helpful to see what's on sale. Next is Too Good to Go. This is probably more popular in busy metropolitan areas, but this is basically an app where the goal is to reduce food waste for restaurants and some grocery stores. The grocery stores and restaurants will post, I think they call them surprise bags of food at a discount. So you won't know what is going to be in the bag, but you can purchase them and then go to the restaurant or grocery store, pick up that. And, if it's a restaurant that you already enjoy eating at, like there might be a really good kind of reduced meal there for you. Next up is Flash Foods, and this is the same concept, but typically used in grocery stores. In the Rochester area, we see it most with the Tops grocery store. And again, it's going to be some of those foods that are like going to be thrown away, but are still in date. And the store is trying to sell them, to make up some of that loss. And so these are going to be at steep discounts. You can also use your SNAP benefits in the Flash Foods app. So this may be beneficial to get a reduced cost on some groceries like meats and bakery items we see pretty regularly on this app. And next is Ibotta. This is a rebate app. And you can download this app and it'll tell you based on the grocery store that you're in, if any of the foods that you're purchasing will have rebates. The rebates are typically given back to you on gift cards. And so you can use them back at the store. You can use them on Amazon or whatever. Sometimes they'll also have rebates on not specific items. So it'll say, a gallon of any brand milk or, any brand bananas. And this is, you take a picture of your receipt and you upload it and you kind of get that rebate. And then once you have enough, you can cash it out to get a little bit more. So this is good, especially if you're already purchasing these items, to just get a little bit more back. Next, we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming when it comes to frugal recipes. And I know we're getting pretty close to 9:30, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but we'll go over these real quickly. Remember, when we're making food choices, consider with those large foods, how we can use these foods in multiple different ways. So here I have an example of a rotisserie chicken. Maybe you go to Costco and you get that $5 rotisserie chicken. And you're like, okay, we're eating rotisserie chicken. And then we're going to make chicken a la king. And then we're going to make chicken quesadillas. And then we're going to make chicken salad sandwiches. And then we're going to make chicken soup with the bones. Like, this is a great way to eat a lot of meals off of one large item. Same thing with like those big tubs of yogurt. Like, can you use it for overnight oats, or maybe some dipping sauces with your veggies, or maybe chuck it in a smoothie? These are just ways to reduce that food waste. When it comes to produce too, kind of consider, how can I eat it fresh? And then how can I eat it maybe a little bit more processed, so like cooked, because the texture might change as it ages? How do I make sure that I consume this before it passes prime where it's no longer good? Here's an example of a rotisserie chicken salad that I might make with the rotisserie chicken if we have lots of leftovers. And I'll kind of go over these real fast. You can go back into the slides to look at these recipes later. Next, we have another kind of pantry staple for our household is a quick Japanese curry, where we're using a lot of those root vegetables, onions, carrots, potatoes, and then a brick of of curry bricks here in Rochester, about $2.99 for the smaller bricks, and you can use as much or as little as you like to get the flavor that you enjoy, and then add in some protein. Maybe this is tofu or chicken or beef cubes or eggs. Sometimes we like to top it with cheese, another great way to get extra dairy in your diet. And then another one, roasted veggies. You can do this with root vegetables. You can also do this with any other vegetables like zucchini or squash, like is in season right now. So awesome to incorporate these in. Really, it doesn't take much: olive oil, salt, and pepper. I have a friend who does a sheet pan dinner who will toss in with the vegetables that she's cooking, toss in some like sausage or kielbasa, another great way to kind of add some protein. I might serve this with a fried egg for another protein option. Really kind of good, hearty, great way to get a little bit more veggies in your diet, low cost. Here's some other recipe sites. There's Budget Bites. This is kind of a list of different recipes, and they have their costs with them. So this is really interesting. Next up, we have Pulses from Pulses USA. This is a website that is has a great variety of different recipes for beans, lentils, legumes. These, of course, are low-cost protein items. And so learning how to cook with these is a great way to decrease the cost of that protein category in your budget. So good recipes here. And then another website is Beat the Budget. Again, it's going to be a lot of recipes with their food costs next to them. So I think that's kind of good information when we're making food choices, to have some inspiration when it comes to our food. Okay, so finally, how do we get more help? I know with the initial poll, it seemed like most of us are not struggling with food insecurity. But like I said, food insecurity is really prevalent. So it's likely that we do know someone who is struggling with food insecurity. So if we are aware of how we can support our neighbors to get more assistance, I think always better, right? So let's first start with something that's probably been on our minds a lot recently, which is governmental food assistance. So the government has a lot of different food assistance programs. SNAP, of course, has been in the news a lot recently. This is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. WIC, which is for women, infants, and children. This is for people who are pregnant or postpartum, as well as infants and children under the age of 5. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program provides commodity foods in boxes, typically for seniors. Meals on Wheels provides low-cost meals delivered to elderly people. The National School Breakfast and Lunch Programs provides free and reduced school breakfast and lunches to kids of school age. And the Summer Food Service Programs provide provide free meals in the summer for kids under the age of 18. Community meals, too, can be another way to reduce the cost of foods and get support from your community. So this might look like, a lot of senior centers have lunch programs or lunch clubs, and these can be either free depending on your income level or at a lower cost than like going to a restaurant. They also have the added benefit of like that social interaction, so it can be really beneficial here. Church hosted meals, this might look like, on Wednesday night for youth group, we always have a meal for the kids and families, right? Or it might look like a potluck after church. Soup kitchens as well will have community meals regularly, and then the summer meal program for kids. Additionally, food pantries also provide foods for people who are in need. Feeding America, again, been in the news a lot recently as far as their ability to be a place where you can donate to support food banks around the country. On their website, they have a search engine where you can type in their zip code. Here is a screenshot from that, where you can type in your zip code and it'll pull up your local food bank. Now, food banks distribute food to local food pantries. So on the food bank website, you're likely to find resources on where to find your most local food pantry. And this is really where you're going to have the most access to food, like where you can go in. And some food pantries will say, this is income based. We want to see proof of income. Some will say no income, just, come We don't care what your income level is. We don't ask questions. Some will be, we're only open certain days a week, or you can only access them, once a month. And so it is just good to be aware of what is available in your area. In the Rochester area, our food bank is Food Link, and Food Links distributes food for the after school meal programs, community meal programs, curbside market, like I was speaking about before, the food pantries, and some other pop-up pantries. So maybe these are like kind of drive-through pantries that you might see more and more these days. You can search on their website as well. You can see this map, again, screenshot directly from FoodLink, to see what is available in your area. And then last, as far as food locations for donation, we have the free food stand locations all over Rochester, New York. Different places around the country will also have free food stands. I know there are several other programs that are designed to have these kind of outside pantries. They look similar to little free libraries in the Rochester area, and they're all around town. These are great places to go if you don't have money to buy food, or you're really struggling to buy food. And also good places to do kind of informal food donation. So I know for us as a family, if we're going out of town for a long time, we might take the produce that we have that we were otherwise going to have to toss, it's still good, and drop it off at one of these free food stands so that our neighbors can have access to that. If you're looking for a list of these locations, this QR code goes directly to a map where you can see the different locations around Rochester where you can either pick up free food or you can donate food if you'd like. And then I think to wrap it up, I think it cannot be understated that community is probably one of our best assets when it comes to fighting food insecurity. It can be very cost effective to pool our resources to feed many mouths. So this might look like, let's have family meals, or let's have Friendsgiving. We really want to make sure that we know our neighbors and we support them. And I think this is really how we are going to fight some of this food insecurity, especially with costs rising. It seems like all of the time with food and people having difficulty accessing food. Like, I think all of this really is going to rely back on community. So I'm glad that you guys have been able to come tonight to learn a little bit more about how we can support each other, support our communities to have better access to food and decrease the cost of food in our own households. So just to wrap up, again, with a little planning and some savvy shopping, you can eat great while saving money. I'm going to just switch to some additional resources. And again, we have this QR code that will link right back to these slides. Okay. Feel free to go in these slides and look at any of the resources that are here. And then I'm also available to answer any questions. It is about 9:30, so I do want to be conscientious of your time. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'm happy to talk about those. But thank you again so much for you guys that were able to participate. I'm very happy that you guys were able to come. So thank you. And I'll just stick around for a few more minutes. So if you have questions, I'm happy to talk about those. Just drop them in the chat. But we've had some really good comments so far, some very good questions also this evening. Thank you. Yep. Thank you guys for coming. Yep. And if there are any slides that you guys want me to go back to, I can certainly do that and talk over them more. I know a lot of content tonight, so I know I talk fast. So again, any questions or anything that you want me to talk on more, just let me know. Yeah, let's see. Let's go back to some of those. Okay, so budget bites was one. Certainly, like Pinterest can also be good when it comes to inspiration. Again, those goals for our nutrition, we try to want to make half of our plate fruits and vegetables, a quarter of our plate grains, try to make half of those whole grains, and then a quarter of our plate some protein choice. But we have pulses. Now, this is a great website for, this is Love Pulses. This is a great website for any recipes having to do with beans, lentils, legumes. And again, remember, these are low-cost protein options. If you click on the link for the slides, which should be at the top of the chat or in the description here, you can go in the slides. This image of the screenshot from the page is clickable, so it'll go right to that website. And then also there was this one, which is Beat the Budget. And this is, again, another kind of lower cost food blog. It was some recipe ideas. I like these because they show what the cost is. The cost is in, I believe in pounds, so I don't believe it's based in the United States, but it still gives us an idea of these are lower cost food options to consider. But yeah, great question. Any other questions? Yeah, thank you for coming. Have a nice night. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and end the stream. Certainly, if you have additional questions or concerns, I'm hoping to post the stream on my page in the next few days. We'll kind of see if there's any edits that we need to make, and then post that to be available to people so you can share it with people who might need that support. But feel free to reach out if you have questions or concerns. I'm happy to help. All right, guys, have a great night and a good rest of your week. Take care.